Let's see, what first piqued my interest in poetry, it actually started back in 6th or 7th grade, I think. I don't really know what it was. I just always liked writing poetry, and finally one day I think it might have been that I'd taken an EOG and was kind of like brain dead and emotional. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna sit down and type up a poem. And I did. And I created a few poems after that, mostly during middle school, and that's sort of where it started. It just kept on going from there. Well, I mean, I'd always read poetry in school. Like, since elementary school, of course, they'd give you like a book of poetry and you'd read it, and sometimes you have to do a project on it. But as I said, during middle school is when before middle school, I never really took that intense an interest in reading poetry. Then I started writing poetry, and I gained the ability to appreciate poetry more, and that's how I got back into really loving reading it as well as writing it. So I guess my love for writing it came first, you could say. Where do I start? Let's see, when creating a new poem, I like to be like in an emotional mood when I write it, like either something recently happened or I'm just in a certain way for some reason or other, sometimes for no reason at all. And I just take that idea or that emotion and I put it onto the paper or onto the computer. When I feel like I'm ready to start writing a poem, when I feel like I have something good to write about, I do. The balance between reality and fiction in my writing, it's very, how do I put this? My poems aren't really reality based. They're like what you'll be reading will sound realistic, but the whole thing is a collection of metaphors, and like nothing actually means what it outright says, and sometimes it can get pretty unrealistic to further the point of my message. I actually think playing a musical instrument helps my poetry, but especially with recital. Because like over the recent years, while playing cello, I've learned to get much more into the music. Like I'm not just playing it on the strings, I'm moving to it, I'm swaying to the music, like the music and I are becoming one. And that's, like both with writing poetry and reciting poetry, that's what you really need to do as well. You need to get into what you're writing or what you're reading. You need to become part of it. You need to let the rhythm of it take over you. I don't think I want to make a living off of it. I feel like there's other stuff I could do and want to do, but I definitely want to keep it up for as much of my life as possible and try and make as much of an impact as I can through my poetry. I probably see more competitions like Poetry Out Loud that I was in recently. I might want to get a book published, like a collection of poetry published, or just get individual poems published. Or I might also at the same time want to keep them to myself and not like let them out to the world to be criticized. There's actually a really awesome poem about that, about an author who publishes her book, and it's like the only reason you publish a book is when you really need money, because once the book's out there, it's being criticized, it's being, like, all the flaws are being pointed out, and it's not yours anymore. So, I guess what I see in my future of poetry is I'll just go along with whatever I feel like at the moment.